Hey guys, it's Let's Read Studios here. Today I'm not going to be reading to you guys. We're actually going to be discussing something. I do have chapter 197 started, volume 197. That should be here within the next couple days for you. But today we're going to be discussing who would have been Universe 7's fighters if the tournament happened around the time the arrival of Raditz, like the early Saiyan arc. Unfortunately, I don't think Goku or Piccolo would have made the cut, and probably not Vegeta either. So let's dive in here and get started. Okay, so we'll go most powerful to least powerful. As the first fighter, I think there is nobody else that is even on his level. We're going to go with Boo. I mean, it's pretty obvious that he would have been their number one fighter. Now, what form of Boo would have been fighting? I mean, I would guess it probably would have been Majin Buu or Fat Buu or Good Buu. I mean, whatever you want to call him. Now, I mean, there's a possibility that, I mean, the gods, knowing what they know, could allow him to absorb other fighters, or maybe allow him to transform and expel the Good Buu and turn into Evil Buu or Super Buu. I mean, it's a pretty obvious number one spot here, being the strongest villain in all of Dragon Ball Z. So there's our number one. Let's move on to number two. So coming in at number two, we have Deborah. I think it's a pretty obvious answer. With a power level of around a perfect cell, he was the king of the demon realm, which that alone speaks a lot, being able to control all of the demons. He has techniques that would be very useful, such as the spit, because it doesn't directly kill them. I really don't understand why they wouldn't have brought him in for the Tournament of Power in Dragon Ball Super once Buu is not around, because the spit attack alone could have gotten rid of a couple enemies. He's been around for thousands of years. He's seen his fair share of fights. I just don't think that at this point in time, at least, there is anybody that is even close to being on his level besides Buu, obviously. So with that being said, let's move on to number three. So for number three, I'm going to have to say Yakon. I know this could be controversial to you guys because of Frieza, but for all intents and purposes, we will say Yakon for this video. He doesn't really have many feats except being able to hold his own with Goku. I mean, there's really not much more I can say about him. I mean, besides the fact that Babri wouldn't have had a slouch fighting for him. So, with that being said, let's move on to number four. So, as the fourth fighter for Universe 7, this is kind of a toss-up between Pew Pew and Frieza. I'm going to have to go with Frieza, though. Just for his obvious feats, destroying the Saiyans, having thousands and thousands at his disposal, just being a prodigy with a power level of 120 million. There's nobody in the known universe besides Boo and Deborah and Yakon that would be able to hold a match against him, besides Pew Pew. But that we still don't even know. That's why I'm putting him in the number 4 spot and not Pew Pew, just for his known feats. I mean, he pretty much was the emperor of the galaxy. There's just nobody that we know of besides the formerly mentioned fighters that would be able to survive an encounter with Frieza. And not to mention, he's just a heartless fighter. He wouldn't have any mercy on anybody. He would do his duty to fight, especially because he only cares about himself. Now, besides Pew Pew, King Cold could have been in this spot as well. But just because we know Frieza's feats, that is why he has this spot. Not to mention, he is a very loved character in the community, even though he is an evil sack of crap for most of the series. He does his job very well. You make him, people want him to lose. You don't want Frieza to win unless it's the Tournament of Power. So with that, let's move on to number 5. Taking the 5th spot in the Tournament of Power, I'm going to have to go with Pew Pew. Now, like I said earlier in the video, King Cold could have easily taken this spot or the 4th spot, but I'm going to have to go with feats here, and Pew Pew being able to hold his own with a Buu Saga Vegeta, even though he wasn't Super Saiyan, he still had an immense power at that point in time. Even though Pew Pew pretty much got dominated the whole fight, he wasn't killed instantly. He was able to take quite a pounding from Vegeta before he actually went down. He is also definitely one of the most powerful fighters in that quadrant of the galaxy, seeing how Babidi took him in as a minion. I just think that he rightfully deserves this spot over King Cold. It's just obvious to me. Maybe you guys disagree, but for me, going on pure feats, he was able to survive against a Vegeta in the Buu Saga. So for me, I'm going to have to say that he deserves this 5th spot. Now, solidifying the 6th spot, we're going to have King Cold. He's been due up now for a few spots. Like I said earlier in the video, he easily could have took the 4th or 5th spot, but going strictly on feats, we really don't have much for him. Now that's not to say maybe he wasn't fully transformed when he fought Trunks, or maybe he wasn't fully powered up. We don't know. We really don't. So we can't say. So strictly going by feats, I'm going to have him in the 6th spot. I mean, he was immediately killed by Future Trunks. He didn't even hold a flame to him. Now that doesn't really speak very well on the feat side of things. I mean, not to say Future Trunks isn't a very powerful character, but compared to the ones mentioned formerly in this video, he doesn't really stand a chance. So I think King Cold, rightfully so, deserves this 6th spot. Now this 7th spot is a pretty interesting one. We don't have any super powerful characters left, so I'm going to have to go with Babidi. I could see his magic being useful in the Tournament of Power at some point, even though his physical strength is not top of the line, he still has many tricks up his sleeve. You never know what he could do. He was disposed of pretty easily by Piccolo, but he was able to hold his barrier up for a couple minutes at least. Now, there's many ways he could be implemented in the Tournament of Power. I mean, he could turn some of the more evil enemies Majin and take them under his control and have them fight other fighters. I mean, we really don't know, though. He was in the anime for such a small amount of time, we don't know the limits of his power. So that is why he's in the 7th spot, though, because he's in the anime so late, when everybody is already so powerful. He was able to control very, very powerful beings. He obviously is a pretty skilled magician, so I'm going to have to give him this 7th spot. Now, coming in at the 8th spot, since pretty much every single other powerful and super powerful character has been used and have their spots solidified, I'm going to have to go with Captain Ginyu. Now remember, this is back during the Saiyan Saga, so there really is no Z fighter who would make this roster. I mean, towards the end, maybe we could give Master Roshi an honorable mention for his tricks that he has up his sleeve, but he still isn't even on the same plane as these guys. I mean, he's actually multiple planes below every single one of these fighters. So for Captain Ginyu, we're going to have to go with his feats and his power level. I mean, he has a power level of over 100,000, which until the Frieza saga is super powerful. He was able to change bodies with Goku. So who's not to say he couldn't have pulled that on Jiren or any of the other fighters in this tournament of power? There's never any rules put up against a technique like that. So for all we know, he could have changed bodies with Jiren and won the tournament. He's not the most powerful, but that body switch technique alone gives him this spot. I mean, his power level does too as well, because we just don't have any other super powerful characters. And with his being over 100,000, we don't have anybody else that's even at 100,000. So this spot definitely belongs to him. And with his technique, I think he definitely could have been somewhat useful in the Tournament of Power if he was able to use his body switch technique quickly and stealthily to take the body of a much, much more powerful fighter who would have been much more of a threat. Now, these last two spots were very, very difficult for me to choose who was going to take them. For this ninth spot, I'm going to have to probably go with one of the members of the Ginyu Force. It doesn't matter which one, it could be any of them, because seeing as how, besides Ginyu and Frieza in the known universe at that point in time, they're the most powerful fighters. There's nobody else that even holds a candle to them besides the formerly mentioned characters, and Vegeta in his Ozaru form. So we'll say any one of them. I mean, it could be Jace, it could be Burter, it could be Raccoon, but not Galdo. We're not going to use Galdo. I mean, even though his time freeze technique could have been implemented very usefully, I just think his power level is way too small for it to actually really be effective. He just wouldn't even be able to damage any of these fighters, even if he was able to freeze time. So we'll go with Jace, Burter, or Raccoon taking this ninth spot. Last but not least, taking the 10th spot, I'm going to put Vegeta in there for the sole fact of his Ozaru form. Now, that's not to say one of these other fighters in the tournament could have destroyed his fake moon. That's a very real possibility. But with a power level of 180,000 in his Ozaru form, he actually is more powerful than Ginyu and anybody that is on the Ginyu Force. His willing to fight, his Saiyan pride, his feats up till that point, even though it is filler, he does blow a planet up. He is definitely a planet buster at that point in time. We know his base power level is 18,000, which isn't anything crazy, but like I said, the 10 times multiplier in his Ozaru form brings him up to 180,000. And a fighter like that in the Tournament of Power, very big, very strong. I mean, maybe not very strong compared to the other fighters, but very big. He definitely could have been a great distraction. He has very large will to fight. He just could have been somewhat useful, I guess. Even though he is the least powerful in base form, he still is a fan favorite, and his Ozaru power level coming up at 180,000, he is actually more powerful than the last two mentioned. The only reason why I have him in this 10th spot is because his base is only 18,000. But like I said, that Ozaru form does clinch him this spot. Okay guys, so there was the top 10. I'm going to do a few honorable mentions. I'm going to go with number 1 is Nappa, particularly for his Ozaru form. Basically, for the same reason I gave Vegeta the number 10 spot. Say some of these people weren't able to participate, so Nappa has to fight. Him and Vegeta could be very troublesome for maybe one or two of these weaker fighters in the tournament. Next, I'm going to go with Nail for obvious reasons. He has a very high power level of 40,000. He did fight Frieza, even though he wasn't able to even land a single punch. He still is very powerful compared to some of the weaker characters in the show and manga at that point. He also could fuse. He could fuse with Piccolo and Kami, and that could create a very powerful being, maybe even on the level of first form Frieza. At this point in time, at least, we know how strong he was when they actually fused in the anime and manga. But at this point in time, I think he could maybe be on the level of a first form Frieza. Another honorable mention will go with obvious Piccolo and Kami. Their fuse could create a ultra powerful being, not like the likes we saw during the Android Saga, but still very powerful nonetheless. Maybe towards the lower end of the spectrum, but like I said, very powerful nonetheless. We'll throw Roshi in there too, as well as an honorable mention, just for the sole fact that he's a very technical fighter. He's a very old man. He has mastered fighting. He's mastered technique. He has very, very many tricks up his sleeve. You never know what he's going to pull out next. We'll also go with, this one is probably going to be out of the blue for you guys, but a character in the very beginning of Dragon Ball. His name is Master Carrot. I don't know if many of you guys are going to know who he is, but he has the power to turn whoever he's fighting against into a carrot. They don't die. They just get turned into a carrot. So I think that could have been very powerful, a trick like that. I mean, maybe he's not powerful enough to use it on somebody like Jiren, but who knows? Maybe it could have been used against somebody like that. That'd be a pretty interesting way to take an ultra powerful fighter out of the fight by somebody that is much, 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 much weaker than them. With a special technique like that. And last but not least, just for the sole fact that he is who he is, we'll go with Goku. He's a very, very skilled and technical fighter, even though his power level is very, very weak at this point in time, actually weaker than Frieza soldiers. But we know his potential now, seeing the anime and the manga. He's the most powerful out of all the universes. So with that hidden potential, maybe the gods would have seen that and started training him, kind of similar to how he was trained by King Kai when the Saiyans were coming. He could have been useful trained correctly. But he is Goku, so we gotta throw him in there. I mean, the whole series revolves around him, and it wouldn't even be around if it wasn't for him. So there we have it, guys. That's my full list, including honorable mentions. If you guys have anybody I forgot, or you don't like my opinion on this, or maybe you just think I mixed up a couple of the spots, maybe somebody else should be in one and the other person should be in the other. Just leave me a comment down below and let me know. Let's get this discussion going. And if you like what I'm making and you look forward to hearing me read some mangas and talk about mangas or anime, give me a like, a subscribe, and a follow. Thank you very much, guys, and have a good one.